The morning they fired Mama Remi, she was on her knees, scrubbing the floor of the same boardroom. 30 years ago, a man had built an empire from nothing in this very room. She did not know that man was her father, or that this building, cleaned for 3 decades, once belonged to her family. She only knew her knees ached. The mop handle had worn a callus. At 63, her life was inside these walls, until that Tuesday morning when the new general manager told her she was no longer needed. Let me go back to where this story actually begins. Not in a boardroom, but a small room in Ejagnal, Lagos. On a rainy night in 1961, young Comfort Ademi gave birth to a baby girl she was not allowed to keep. Comfort was 19, unmarried. Her strict Yoruba father decided this baby was a problem. The father was Solomon Dada, 22, who came from nothing but had a fierce refusal to die poor. Solomon and Comfort had loved each other with the loud, uncareful love of young people. When Comfort's father found out, he sent Solomon away and told his daughter the baby would be handled. Comfort never fully understood what handle meant until her father took the baby from the room. She screamed for 3 days. Her father told her the baby had been given to a family in Ibadan. He died in 1979 without ever telling her the full truth. The full truth was this: the baby had not gone to good people in Ibadan. The baby had been left at the gate of a church in Mushin on a rainy night with a small piece of paper. The paper had one name, Remi. The pastor's wife found her before morning. They called her Remi. She grew up in the church compound, fed and schooled, taught to work hard. She was told her mother had passed away in childbirth and there was no family to take her. Remi grew up with a sense of not fully belonging, of being received but not claimed. She was a quiet child. She married at 27, a good man named Taiwo who drove a Danfo bus and loved her plainly. They had 2 children, Kunel and Saad. They lived in 2 rooms in Mushin, where her story had begun. Taiwo died when Remi was 32. She was alone with 2 children, no savings, and a profound silence. She found work cleaning offices, washing clothes, selling akara. She kept her children fed and in school. Then in 1991, she heard Dada Holdings was hiring cleaners, the biggest privately owned company on Lagos Island. Remi did not know the name Solomon Dada meant anything. She knew only that the job paid better. She got the job. She started the following Monday. 34 years old, she did not know she was walking into her father's building. The Solomon Dada she occasionally glimpsed was a man in his late 50s, tall, broad-shouldered. He knew the names of the security guards and sometimes asked the cleaning staff if they had everything they needed. Remi was good at her work, quietly, methodically. Her floors were always cleaner, her windows clearer. She moved with the focused efficiency of a woman who took seriously the only thing she had been given to take seriously. The years went by. Kunal found work. Saad became a nurse. Remi's 2 rooms became 1. The building changed around her. Staff came and went. Managers arrived with new ideas. Technology entered, and suddenly there were computers and young employees who looked through Remi like she was a window. Solomon Dada died in 2008. Remi heard about it through a general announcement. The company passed to Solomon's only child, Dare Dada, who had grown up in the business. Dare was not his father. He had inherited hunger without having been truly hungry. He made changes. Efficiency reviews, staff restructuring, the kind of language organizations use when people are about to be told they are no longer needed. The memo came down in October. All non-essential support staff, over 55, to be reviewed for retirement. Remi's name was on the list. She was 63. She had worked in this building for 30 years. She had cleaned every floor, every bathroom, every boardroom. She had come to work through floods, fuel scarcity, and elections. She had come to work the week her son had an accident. In the morning her landlord threatened to throw her out. TRT. Years. And now memo. The new general manager, Mr. Bankel, he spoke with the careful confidence of a man who had learned management theory in a classroom and applied it with great precision to situations that required something more than theory. He called Remi into his office on a Tuesday morning. She came in her gray uniform, hands folded. He told her quickly, efficiently, her position was being eliminated. She would receive her gratuity. Her final day would be the end of the month. He thanked her for her years of service. As if reculate, Remi stood there. She had known this was coming. The memo had circulated, and the other women had talked. But knowing a thing and standing in the room where it is being said to your face are not the same. She thought about 30 years. Her mop, her bucket, the smell of cleaning fluid she mixed each morning. She thought about the boardroom on the 17th floor, whose windows faced the lagoon, her closest thing to peace. She said, "I understand." As she turned to go, Mr. Bankel said, "Oh, Mama, Remi. Before you go, HR needs your full name for the final documentation, your complete name, as it appears on your birth records." Remi turned back. "Ramilkan," she said. "My surname is Abiodun, the pastor's name, but not my original family name." Mr. Bankel looked up. "What is your original family name?" Remi was quiet for a moment. "I don't know my father's name," she said simply. "I was raised by a pastor. On my birth certificate it says, Ramilkan who's Ramil, no surname. My people named me Abiodun after the pastor, but that was not given to me by blood." Mr. Bankel frowned, a young man encountering a complexity his forms hadn't prepared him for. The Achere woman, Mrs. Coker, who had processed Remi's original papers, looked up from her notepad. "Mama, Remi," she said slowly, "that paper you submitted when you first joined, you had a church document. Do you remember what was written on it?" Remi nodded. It said, "I was found at the gate of the church in Mush in 1961, with a cloth and a piece of paper with my name." Mrs. Coker had gone very still. She set her pen down. "Se stood up," she said. "Please wait here." And she left the room with unusual speed. Mr. Bankel looked at Remi with confusion. Remi stood with her hands folded and waited. Mrs. Coker was gone for 11 minutes. When she came back, she was holding two things: a file, old, thick, with a faded cover, and a photograph. She set both on the desk. She turned the photograph to face Remi. Remi looked at it. It was a photograph of Solomon Dada, a man in his 20s, perhaps. And beside him, a young woman, both serious and old photographs, but the young woman's eyes had something in them that was trying to be hidden and not entirely succeeding. "Do you know who this woman is?" Mrs. Coker asked. Remi shook her head. "Her name was Comfort Adimi," Mrs. Coker said. "She was Solomon Dada's first love. They were separated by her family when she became pregnant in 1961. The baby was taken from her at birth. She spent the rest of her life trying to find that child." The room was very quiet. "Comfort Ademi died in 2015, Mrs. Coker continued. "She died knowing only one thing about her daughter, the name on the piece of paper that was found with her." Mrs. Coker opened the old file with careful hands. Inside, among other documents, was a photocopy of a very old piece of paper. Faded, the handwriting shaky, as though written by someone who was frightened or exhausted or both. One word. Ramilkan Remi's hand went to her mouth. She looked at the paper. She looked at the photograph of the young woman, with the hidden thing in her eyes. She looked at the file. The dates, the documents. A letter that Solomon Dada had written in 2006, 2 years before he died, to a private investigator. He had been paying for years to look for a child born in Lagos in 1961, left at a church in Mushi, with a name and nothing else. The investigator had never found her. She had been in Solomon's building for 15 years. By the time he died, she had cleaned his office every morning. She had polished the floors under his feet. And he had never known, and she had never known. Mrs. Coker's eyes were wet. Even Mr. Bankel, young and precise, was sitting with his hands flat on the desk and saying nothing. Remi stood in the middle of that office and felt something happen inside her that she did not have words for. Not joy exactly. Not grief exactly. Something that was both and neither. The specific feeling of a thing that has been missing for 63 years suddenly having a name. She thought about the pastor's wife, who had told her her mother died in childbirth. She thought about every birthday she had spent not knowing whose blood she carried. She thought about 30 years of cleaning these floors. 30 years of standing at that boardroom window looking at the lagoon. Something had always made that window feel different from the others. She had never been able to explain it. She had dismissed it as foolishness. Now she stood in this office and wondered if the body knows things the mind has not been given permission to understand. Her knees, which had ached all morning, felt suddenly unimportant. The news moved through the building, the way news moves through a place where people have worked together for a long time. Quickly and with a specific emotional charge of something that touches everyone because everyone had watched this woman move through their corridors for decades without seeing her. Dada was in a meeting on the 14th floor when his assistant interrupted. His assistant was not a person who interrupted meetings. He looked at her face and excused himself immediately. She told him in the corridor. He stood there for a moment. He was a man who had grown up knowing the story of his grandfather's lost child. It was family knowledge, the wound that Solomon had carried, the search that had continued even after Solomon died, because Dare had maintained the investigator's retainer as a kind of tribute to his grandfather's grief. He took the elevator down to the HR floor. He walked into the office where Remi was still standing, with Mrs. Coca beside her. He looked at her, a 63-year-old woman in a gray cleaning uniform, with a mop callus on her right palm and 30 years of this building's dust in her lungs. He looked at the photograph of his grandfather as a young man. He looked at the documents spread on the desk. He said, "Mama Remi." She looked at him. "My grandfather searched for you for 40 years, he said. His voice was careful, controlled, but only just. He died, not knowing if you were alive." Remi said nothing. She was not yet a woman who had words for this. "Your mother," Dare continued. "Comfort, Ademi. She also searched. She wrote letters to the investigator every year until she couldn't anymore. She died in 2015. Remi closed her eyes briefly. "She never stopped," Dare said. Neither of them ever stopped. The thing that had been building in Remi's chest since Mrs. Coker had put that photograph on the desk finally arrived. She was not a woman who cried easily. 63 years of managing alone had made her someone who kept her emotions in a controlled, private place. But she cried now, quietly, the way she did everything. Without drama, without performance. Just tears that came because some feelings are larger than the containers a person builds for them. Over a lifetime. Mrs. Coker put her hand on Remi's back. Dear Dada sat down in the chair across from her and leaned forward with his elbows on his knees and waited while she felt whatever she needed to feel. He did not rush her. He did not offer words. He had enough sense to understand that there are moments where silence is the only appropriate response. When Remi was ready, she wiped her face with the edge of her uniform. She looked at Dare. "He built all of this," she said. "From nothing," Dare said. "He always said he built it because he had something to prove. That a man from a Jaginel with no connections and no capital could build something."